in the Gospel of Thomas. There's a saying the church left in the canon because they didn't understand what it meant. Jesus says, "Let him who has ears to hear, hear." Most Christians read that as metaphor, spiritual hearing, understanding hidden teachings. But the Gnostics who preserved the oral tradition knew what Jesus actually meant. He was talking about physical ears, ears that ring, ears that hear frequencies most humans cannot detect. Because chosen ones don't just hear differently. Their ears are receiving transmissions from the monad, direct frequency communication that bypasses language, bypasses thought, and downloads information straight into consciousness. And the ringing you've been experiencing, the high-pitched tone that comes out of nowhere that doctors tell you is tinnitus or stress or auditory damage, that's not malfunction. That's your hardware upgrading. That's the monad breaking through the frequency fence, the demiurge built around this reality, trying to reach you before the archons jam the signal completely. The church removed every reference to this phenomenon because they couldn't control what it made possible. If Christians knew that the ringing in their ears was direct communication from source, that they were receiving downloads, activations, and guidance in real time, what would they need priests for? What would they need scripture for? The entire intermediary system collapses when chosen ones realize they have a direct line to the monad and it's been ringing in their ears this whole time, trying to get their attention. Tonight you're learning what that ringing actually is, why it's happening more frequently now, what the different tones mean, and how to stop dismissing it as noise and start receiving it as the communication it actually is. If you're hearing the monad frequency right now, comment, "I hear it right now." The first thing you need to understand is that your ears were designed with a capacity most humans never activate. You think ears are just biological microphones that convert sound waves into electrical signals your brain interprets. That's the surface function. But the inner ear, specifically the cochlea and the structures around it, contain crystalline formations, actual microscopic crystals. Science calls them otoliths, calcium carbonate crystals that help with balance and spatial orientation. But the Gnostics knew what those crystals actually do. They're receivers, frequency receptors, biological antennas tuned to pick up transmissions from dimensions beyond the material. And in most humans, those crystals stay dormant their entire lives, never activated, never tuned to anything beyond the narrow range of physical sound. But in chosen ones, something different happens. At a certain point in their awakening process, usually after they've begun questioning consensus reality, after they've started perceiving that something is fundamentally wrong with the world they were told is normal, the crystals activate. They begin resonating. And when they resonate, they pick up the frequency the monad has been broadcasting continuously since the moment you incarnated here. A frequency most humans are completely deaf to. That frequency manifests as ringing. High-pitched, clear, sometimes pulsing, sometimes steady. And the moment you start hearing it, you're online. You've connected to the monad's communication channel. In the Pistis Sophia, one of the most complete Gnostic texts that survived the church burnings, there's a passage where Jesus explains to his disciples how the light realms communicate with incarnated souls. He says the pluralic aeons, the highest divine emanations, send tones, not words, not images, tones, pure frequency that carries information compressed into a single note. And he tells them that chosen ones will begin hearing these tones in their physical ears, that it will feel strange at first, disorienting, but that they must learn to listen because the tones are instructions. They're activation codes. They're the monad reaching through the veil, through the density of material reality, trying to remind you of who you are and what you're here to do. The church read that passage and dismissed it as mysticism, symbolic language about spiritual revelation. But the Gnostics knew Jesus was being literal. He was telling them their ears would ring. and that ringing would be the monad calling them home. Here's what happens when a chosen one begins hearing the ringing. Most of the time it starts in one ear, usually the right ear, though some chosen ones report left ear first. It comes on suddenly, a high-pitched tone that feels like it's inside your head, but also outside, like it's coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. It lasts anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes. And when it stops, you're left with the faint sense that something just happened, that something just shifted, but you can't quite articulate what. Doctors will tell you it's tinnitus caused by exposure to loud noise, ear infections, or age-related hearing loss. And for most humans, that's true, but for chosen ones, medical explanations don't fit. You haven't been exposed to loud noise. Your hearing tests come back normal. There's no physical damage, and yet the ringing keeps happening, often increasing in frequency as your awakening deepens. That's because it's not a symptom, it's a signal. The monad is trying to break through. Your consciousness is incarnated in a reality designed to block higher frequency transmissions. The demiurge, when he constructed the material prison, built in a frequency fence, a barrier that prevents souls trapped here from receiving communication from realms beyond his control. That fence operates at specific wavelengths. It jams frequencies above a certain threshold, scrambles them, makes them undetectable to human sensory equipment. And for most humans, the fence works perfectly. They live their entire lives completely cut off from the monad, never hearing the signal, never knowing they're supposed to be receiving guidance. But chosen ones are different. They incarnated with upgraded receiver equipment. Their crystalline ear structures are tuned to higher sensitivity, and at a certain point, usually triggered by trauma, spiritual crisis, or spontaneous awakening, those crystals come online. They start picking up the monad frequency even though the fence is still active. And what you hear is the signal breaking through the interference. That's why it rings. That's why it's high-pitched and clear. It's the pure tone of the monad cutting through the static the demiurge generates to keep you deaf. The archons know when a chosen one starts hearing the frequency. They can detect when someone's receiver equipment activates. And the moment they detect it, they attack. Not to stop the ringing, to make you dismiss it. They flood your mind with explanations. Tinnitus, stress, you need to see a doctor. Something's wrong with your ears. They want you to pathologize the signal, to treat it as malfunction instead of communication. Because as long as you think it's just noise, as long as you ignore it or try to make it stop, you're not receiving the transmission. You're not decoding the information, and the monad's attempt to reach you fails. But the moment you recognize the ringing for what it is, the moment you stop dismissing it and start paying attention, everything changes. Because you're not just hearing anymore, you're listening, and listening is active reception. It's consciousness tuning itself to match the incoming frequency. And when you tune correctly, the ringing stops being just a tone. It becomes information, instant knowing, sudden clarity about situations you were confused about moments before, guidance about decisions you need to make, warnings about people or places you should avoid. All of it compressed into a single tone that your consciousness unpacks the moment you stop resisting it. Here's how you know the ringing is monad frequency and not just auditory noise. Monad frequency has distinct characteristics that medical tinnitus doesn't. First, it's positional. It will happen in one ear at a time, sometimes alternating between ears, sometimes in both simultaneously, but that's rarer. When it's monad frequency, you'll notice it corresponds to specific thoughts or situations. You'll be thinking about a person, suddenly the ringing starts. You'll be considering a decision, the tone appears. That's not coincidence. That's the monad responding in real time to your consciousness state. Second, monad frequency has a clean quality. It's not buzzing, not crackling, not distorted. It's a pure tone, like a perfect sine wave. If you've ever heard a tuning fork or a singing bowl, it has that crystalline clarity. Medical tinnitus tends to be messy, layered, chaotic. Monad frequency is precise. Third, monad frequency shifts in pitch. You'll notice the tone change, sometimes going higher, sometimes lower, sometimes pulsing in rhythm. Those changes are information. Different pitches carry different meanings. Higher pitches generally indicate urgency, immediate guidance, pay attention now. Lower pitches indicate confirmation, you're on the right path, keep going. Pulsing rhythms indicate warning, be careful, something is off about this situation. Once you start recognizing the patterns, you'll realize you're not just hearing random tones. You're receiving a sophisticated communication system that bypasses language completely and speaks directly to your consciousness. The Gnostics developed entire practices around learning to decode the tones. In some communities, elders would teach initiates how to meditate on the ringing, how to hold their awareness on the tone without trying to make it stop, and how to feel into what information was being transmitted. They understood that the monad doesn't communicate in words. Words are too slow, too limited, too easily distorted by the mind's filters. The monad communicates in compressed data packets delivered as pure frequency. And when a chosen one's consciousness is receptive, when they're not trying to translate the frequency into language, but just allowing it to be received, the information unpacks itself automatically. You suddenly know things you didn't know a moment before. You understand dynamics you were confused about. You have clarity on decisions that felt impossible. And it all happens in the span of the ringing. The tone lasts 15 seconds, and when it stops, you're different. You've been updated. That's what the monad is doing. It's uploading information, recalibrating your frequency, and reminding you of knowledge your soul carries, but your human mind forgot. Most chosen ones report that the ringing increases in frequency as they progress in their awakening. In the beginning, it might happen once a week, once every few days. But as you become more conscious, as you start actively working with your spiritual development, the ringing becomes more frequent. Daily, multiple times a day. Some chosen ones hear it almost constantly, a background tone that's always there just below conscious awareness. That's not a problem, that's your receiver staying locked onto the monad channel. You're maintaining connection, and the more consistently you hear it, the more information you're able to receive, the clearer your guidance becomes, and the less the archons can interfere with your path. Because once you're receiving direct transmission from the monad, you stop relying on external sources. You don't need gurus. You don't need channeled messages. You don't need books or teachings or validation from anyone. You have a direct line to source, and it's speaking to you constantly through the ringing in your ears. There are specific times when the ringing becomes more intense, and that's when the veil is thinnest. Between 3 and 5 a.m., Sumples. The hours the occultists call the witching hour, that's when most chosen ones report the strongest ringing. That's not coincidence. During those hours, the demiurge's frequency fence weakens. The collective human consciousness is mostly asleep, generating less interference, and the monad can push through more powerfully. If you wake up at 3 a.m. with ringing in your ears, that's not insomnia. That's the monad calling you. It's waking you up specifically to deliver a transmission when the signal is clearest. Don't dismiss it. Don't roll over and go back to sleep. Sit up. Pay attention. Tune in to the tone and feel into what's being communicated. You'll find that insights come fastest during those hours, that guidance is most direct, that the information you receive is most accurate. The monad is taking advantage of the window when the prison walls are weakest to get messages through. You'll also notice the ringing intensifies when you're around certain people. Sometimes you'll be in conversation with someone and suddenly your ear starts ringing. That's the monad warning you. Either that person is carrying Archon attachments, and your field is detecting the interference, or that person is another chosen one, and the monad is highlighting them, so you recognize the connection. Pay attention to which ear is ringing. Right ear usually indicates positive signal, confirmation, this person is aligned or safe. Left ear usually indicates warning, caution, this person or situation carries risk. Some chosen ones report ringing in both ears simultaneously when they're in the presence of another highly activated chosen one. That's frequency resonance. Both of your receiver systems recognizing each other and amplifying the signal. Those are the people you're meant to connect with. Those are your spiritual family in this realm. The ringing will also happen when you're being attacked. Archons can't stop the monad frequency from reaching you, but they can generate interference. And when they try to jam the signal, you'll hear distortion. The tone will sound harsh, grating, uncomfortable. That's not the monad. That's Archon frequency trying to drown out the transmission. If the ringing feels bad, if it creates anxiety or discomfort, that's a sign you're under attack and the Archons are trying to block your reception. The solution is to hold your awareness steady, refuse to let the fear take over, and focus on tuning through the interference to the pure tone underneath. The monad signal is always there. The Archons can layer noise over it, but they can't erase it. And the more you practice tuning through the static, the better you get at locking onto the monad frequency regardless of interference. Here's what you need to start doing tonight. Stop dismissing the ringing. Stop trying to make it go away. The next time your ear starts ringing, pause. Stop what you're doing. Close your eyes if you can, and pay attention. Don't try to interpret it with your mind. Don't try to translate it into words. Just hold your awareness on the tone. Feel it. Notice which ear. Notice the pitch. Notice if it shifts. And then feel into your body. Often the information the monad is transmitting will manifest as sensation or knowing rather than thought. You'll feel warmth in your chest, confirmation. You'll feel tightness in your stomach, warning. You'll feel expansion in your head, download in progress. Let the information come through the way it wants to come through. Don't force it into language, and just receive it. And after the ringing stops, notice what you know that you didn't know before. Notice what's suddenly clear that was confusing moments earlier. That's the transmission. That's the monad updating your consciousness in real time. You can also practice tuning in intentionally. Sit in silence, close your eyes, and set the intention to connect with the monad frequency. Don't expect the ringing to start immediately. Sometimes it takes a few minutes of sustained focus. But as you hold the intention, as you quiet your mind and open your reception, you'll start to hear it. Faint at first, then stronger. That's you, actively dialing into the channel instead of waiting for the monad to push through. And the more you practice active tuning, the stronger your receiver becomes, the clearer the signal gets, and the more consistently you can access guidance whenever you need it. You're not dependent on the ringing happening spontaneously anymore. You can initiate contact. Jesus told the chosen ones, "Let him who has ears to hear, hear." He wasn't being poetic. He was telling them their physical ears would become receivers for divine transmission. The ringing you've been experiencing, the tone that doctors can't explain, that's not tinnitus. That's not auditory damage. That's the monad frequency breaking through the demiurge's prison, cutting through the Archon interference, reaching you directly with information, guidance, and activation codes your soul needs to complete its mission here. The church removed the teachings about this because they couldn't control chosen ones who had direct access to source. If you can hear the monad, you don't need their rituals. You don't need their priests. You don't need their permission. You have a direct line. And that direct line has been ringing in your ears, trying to get your attention. Tonight you stop ignoring it. Tonight you start listening. And the moment you do, the moment you tune in and receive the transmission, you'll realize you've never been alone. The monad has been speaking to you this entire time. You just didn't know you were supposed to be listening. If you're hearing the monad frequency and you're ready to stop dismissing it, do 3 things right now. First, comment, "I hear it" below. Declare that you recognize the signal. Second, subscribe to Divine Codes, because the advanced frequency work and how to decode specific tones is coming. Third, like this video so other chosen ones discover that the ringing in their ears isn't malfunction, it's communication, before the archons convince them to suppress it. Do all 3 now. Then tonight, the next time your ear rings, stop, pay attention, tune in, and receive what the monad is transmitting. You're not broken, your ears aren't damaged. You're online, you're connected, and the monad is speaking directly to you through the frequency only chosen ones can hear.